Welcome, everybody. Don't have time to read my newsletter this week? That's okay. I'll read it to you. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. The title this week is Tales from the Jar Side. The JVM Weekly is great. AI tools for Java developers, spring office hours, and the usual silly assortment of Toots and Skeets. The subtitle this week is My Printer Ran Out of Paper, so I filled it with strawberry preserves. Now I have a paper jam. Yeah, I'm sorry, but there it is. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of August 13th through 20th, 2023. I should note, I think I actually got the dates right this time. This week I taught a new features in Java course, which was always fun, on the O'Reilly Learning Platform, and I gave a no-fluff, just stuff webinar entitled Practical AI Tools for Java Developers. More on that later. Regular readers of, and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads, and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and attractive than the average newsletter reader or listener or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the provided button. That gives me our weekly chance to check out the YouTube channel. So if I go there, it appears that I am currently at 597 subscribers. I was tempted to delay or stall to see if I got those last 3 subscribers to get to a nice round number, but so be it. Didn't get it this week. That's all right. Let's go back to the newsletter. Let's talk about the JVM Weekly. Over the past few months, I've been reading an excellent newsletter called JVM Weekly. Let me open that in another tab here. Here is the JVM Weekly by, let's see if I can go to the About page here. Magnify that a little bit. It's a newsletter that provides weekly updates on news, trends, and best practices related to the Java virtual machine and its ecosystem. And there it is. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. If I go back to home here, you'll see that there's a ton of, well, actually, there's a fair number in the archive. And it's written by someone whose name is very small here. But if I go to the most recent issue, then you could see it. Artur, presumably Skaronsky, if I said it right. Feel free to correct me if I got that wrong. There's his LinkedIn link and Twitter handle, and, well, actually he's got his Twitter handle twice. Okay, so be it. All right, so at any rate, as you could probably judge from the name of my newsletter, Tales from the Jar Side, I spent a lot of time in the Java world. For those who are not aware, the term jar in Tales from the Jar Side, jar is a Java archive, basically a zip file for compiled Java code. I mean, you could distribute source that way too, but that's often what it's used for. It's the standard way to distribute Java libraries, just for your information. So Artur does the same thing, except his approach is far more complementary to mine than what I do. He covers the same overall area, but at a completely different level. So as an example, I know about new features in Java and I teach people how to use them. He actually digs into the specifications themselves and talks about how they're implemented and what's coming and what different variations are possible and everything. Whereas I'm like, yeah, when it gets here, I'll learn how to use it and then I'll show everybody how to do that. I tend to ignore features that are labeled as incubating or preview, and just enough to get an idea what's coming up, but I don't want to learn it and then have to relearn it. He digs into the details and lets you know what's happening. I follow Groovy as an alternative JVM language and Kotlin to some degree. He is interested in Kotlin, but he's much more into Scala as well. He cares about frameworks like Quarkus, which is a microservice framework. I tend to follow Micronaut on that more, although I was an old Grails person from a long time when Grails was very hot. And of course, I spent lots of time on Spring. I see the Java virtual machine mostly as a black box that I just learn how to use and show people how to work their way through, whereas he opens it up and tries to understand all the details and the performance aspects and everything. And to people who are not Java people, the differences may not sound all that dramatic, but it's really interesting to me. I learn a lot from his newsletter every week. So I wanted to bring it up. Why am I bringing it up now? Well, a couple weeks ago in his JVM Weekly, he made a few jokes related to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which, of course, I always liked. I haven't mentioned it yet. I actually have somewhere a couple of autographed copies from Douglas Adams from way back in I guess it would be the early 80s when the books were out, but he made a tour bringing out his latest book, which I think at the time might have been the fourth one, something like that. And I bought a couple copies and stood in line, and he signed them, and he gave a talk where I went to school, and it was very entertaining. At any rate, Artur made some references to that, and he also lamented the fact that he's only on the waiting list for the new AI assistant tool inside the JetBrains IDEs. And I added a comment that praised the jokes, of course, and I also said I've been using that tool. He's really going to like it, and I do like it, especially the way it generates commit messages for Git repositories. I live on that now. Any rate, I mentioned it to him, and that must have gotten him to notice my newsletter or something, because earlier this week I got a notification that he had subscribed to my newsletter. And not only did he subscribe, he actually added it to the recommended list on his newsletter, which I was very happy to see that. So I had already subscribed to his, obviously. I wasn't sure I'd remember to recommend his, but now I am. So it's on my regular page. You'll find him in my recommended list, or his newsletter anyway. Okay, so if you like Java stuff, I would take a look. But if you're not interested in that, if you read my newsletter for the stories and other things, that's fine too, obviously. I did get an uptick in subscribers this week. I still call them subscribers even though it's a free newsletter, but at any rate, that's the name I use. I don't know if my uptick in subscribers was because of that recommendation, or I'm still feeling what I'm calling the Venkat effect. As I mentioned last week, I did a live stream back on the channel here. If I go to the live tab, you see there was my Tales from the Jar Side live stream with Venkat. It's got a fair number of views there. Plus, if I go to the shorts tab, I put in a couple of extracted shorts about the same thing, which have gotten a lot of views for me, at any rate, certainly in the amount of time they've been out. So I don't know if that's the reason my subscriber numbers have gone up or not. I don't know. Whatever. One of the gags he used in last week's newsletter was this one about the difference between science and engineering. Science, he's got the two forks hanging off of a penny balanced on the edge of a glass. You can see the forks are bent in just enough to make the whole thing balance. And of course, in engineering, you just apply duct tape to the whole thing, and of course it works. Yeah, duct tape for the win. His newsletter, JVM Weekly, is also currently free, although I noticed on the Substack it had one of those pledge your support. Let's see if I go back to the homepage for it. See, it's got this little button up here that says pledge your support. Presumably when you go to Tales from the Jar Side, you see the same thing. I don't see that. I'm already logged in, and maybe you won't either. I don't know, but I guess I'm subscribed here, so sure. And if you click on that, it says, oh, do you want to, well, here, let me magnify that a bit. JVM Weekly is currently free to read. Tell them that you value their writing by pledging a future subscription. How much you want to subscribe, pledge there. Okay. I mean, I guess I could do that, but I haven't done that yet. And I guess that's probably on mine as well. So be it. If I do ever decide to charge for this newsletter, just mentioning, then the Sunday issue will be free the way it currently is. The only way I would wind up charging for this is if I expanded it to offer it, say, 3 times a week, and therefore I would be charging for the complete series and any extras I can come up with, rather than just doing the free newsletter every Sunday. But the Sunday one will stay that way. I mean, wouldn't change any of that. Let's move on to the next section. AI tools for Java developers. On Friday, I gave a free No Fluff Just Stuff webinar called Practical AI Tools for Java Developers. Here's the webinar page over at No Fluff Just Stuff. Actually, it's got a link. I'd link directly to the recording of the video here. So I'll just close that, but it's available if you want it. I think I can close this as well. So the title was Practical AI Tools for Java Developers, and I'm turning that into a half-day training course. I think I linked to the first run of that, which is going to happen as a virtual workshop on October 10th, I believe. So that gives me another month and a half, basically, to get everything into shape. Those are 3.5 hours is the way they work out if you take a look at the format and the schedule on that. So it's not quite half day, it's 3.5 hours there. If you make it, please say hi, whatever. But I've been working on this area for quite some time now, digging into it. And the philosophy that I've taken is, well, it's open to debate, but my approach is to say, look, if you look at any of the existing programming interfaces to any of these major AI tools, if they have a programming interface at all, it's either written in Python or it's a series of what they call REST endpoints. You access it via HTTP with GET and POST requests, sometimes put and delete, but usually it's just GET and POST, and you pass JSON data back and forth. And, that's easy enough for Java to do, as easily as any other programming language. I don't need to write in PHP to do that, or write in Go or Python. I can do that in Java. So that's what I've been doing. The server side of much of the internet is already in Java. And rather than adapt what we're doing to those AI tools, why not incorporate an interface that allows you to bring those tools into the server side of our development? Seems like an easy enough thing to do. Plus, it gives me an excuse to show a lot of the cool features that have been added to Java over the last several versions. So that's the basic approach. And I made a GitHub repository. Here it is. If I open that link, it's called OpenAI Demo. I probably should rename that to something a little bit better. And I've got a little bit of detail about it and talk about how I use OpenAI tools, both ChatGPT and the Whisper API, which Whisper AI is all about transcribing text from audio and also doing translations, but I didn't play with any of that. And to use some of the image generation tools, I use this thing called PicoGen. And PicoGen is a front end on like Midjourney, which doesn't have an API otherwise, and Stable Diffusion as well. But I also went directly to Stable Diffusion because they do have an API. So there's a lot of code in there. And I did everything with the HTTP client from Java 11, although I think on one example, the Whisper AI one, I needed to use the Apache HTTP client because HTTP client from Java didn't have enough capabilities. It was easier to do it with a different one. But I also talked about using that AI assistant inside IntelliJ and working with GitHub Copilot inside of IntelliJ as well. As a silly example, I generated this image from the prompt in Midjourney. So the prompt here you can see is Batman and Robin playing Fortnite on the back computer in the Batcave. And this is the image I got back, which, not too bad, not great. I mean, it's a little questionable. I don't know when Robin got glasses, and boy, that's a lot of keys on that keyboard, and sitting at this little desk with both of them, but all right, I've seen a lot worse. That was pretty good from Midjourney. I decided also to make a YouTube video, which is called AI Tools in Java 17. This is going to be the beginning of a new playlist. It's going to be a series of videos on that topic. In the first one, I mostly focused on how to set up the project, how to work with the HTTP client class, how to map the JSON data to records, and then how to work with just basic, simply listing the available models in the OpenAI API, if you will. So that's been out for a few days now. If you're interested, again, just right under the videos tab, it's the latest video at the top here on AI tools. And there'll be a part 2 to that this week. That'll be coming out. And during part 2, I'm going to actually talk about using the ChatGPT part and how I solve various problems with it. I hope to even get into some parallel streams on that. Try to be fun. One thing about that listing the models, these are some of the models that were listed. The list is something like, 15, 20, 25 models long, most of which are old and not something you want to use anymore. But these are the ones that were sorted by local date. I did show how to transform the Unix timestamp into a Java date time. And that's why you see the sort here in reverse order. I did a stream with a sort on that. These are the ones listed as GPT-3. And I remember noticing when I was doing this, it's like, hey, how come there's no GPT-4 in there? I know I've been using that. And when I tried to run this during the webinar, GPT-4 failed, and I didn't realize that was the problem. And after the webinar, I found out that GPT-4 is no longer available to everybody. I don't know. I seem to remember using it, but I could be wrong about that. Somebody had posted a message saying that they made it available to everybody who spent at least $1 on the API. And I thought, well, I must have spent $1. Not so much, as it turns out. In August, of course, just preparing for that webinar, I wound up spending not quite a whole penny. And in July, when I was preparing for UberConf and doing lots of debugging and figuring this stuff out, I spent a whopping 19 cents. I almost made it to 20 cents on that. So I'm not really racking up the charges, and that's kind of a nice feature that it's not all that expensive for me to use. If I put it into production and was doing thousands of requests, that would be different. But this is mostly demonstrations. Hopefully, they will grant me GPT-4 access by the time I run the training class. Not that it's critical to see. All the code would be the same. I just pick a different engine. I do have GPT-4 access from the website because I pay for that as a subscription fee. The API access is handled completely differently and handled by usage. Now, again, I learned something from JVM Weekly when Artur talked about how to work with these AI tools. He brought up the tool called JLlama and one called llama2.java. Both of those are mechanisms to work with something like Meta's large, Llama 2 large language model. The JLlama one, I think, is actually an implementation of its own, although it can work with Llama 2. I think it's as much a teaching app as anything else to show you how the transformer API and architecture works, and I'll be digging into that. I haven't played as much with Llama 2 yet. I'll have to take a look at them both, and I'm not sure how I'm going to incorporate those into the course, but I'm expecting that Artur will have some ideas. Next section. Early in the week, I got contacted by my friend Dan Vega, who I've had on the live stream before. As a reminder, over here on my channel, if you look at the live stream, Dan Vega was on here. Oh, he was only my second ever live stream. That's been a couple of months, interestingly enough. So maybe it's time to bring him back. I don't know. But he is, by the way, he's currently at whatever the Spring One part of the VMware Expo is in Vegas this week. Dan contacted me. He tends to run what he calls spring office hours. You see the little hashtag there, which is a podcast/screencast, and they often answer a lot of questions. If I go to the replay page here, you'll see that it's actually as part of VMware, and he does this with Deshaun Carter, and apparently Deshaun was unavailable this week. So he invited me to come and sit in with him, and I did that, and he linked to the wrong YouTube channel. He linked to my personal channel rather than Tales from the Jar Side, but you all know better. If you want to see it, there's the office hours. You're welcome to listen to it or watch it on YouTube. That's perfectly fine. And we had a really good time. Now, he spent more time talking about my history and background and how I got into teaching training classes and how I got into Spring and all of that than answering questions. I felt a little guilty about that, but it seemed to be what he wanted. So we'll see. Next time I get to sit in for Deshaun, if ever, I'll try to focus more on answering questions from people who are there, assuming I have any answers. Dan was very gracious. I do wish all my friends at Spring One that I think here's the page for that right now. VMware Explore is the overall name of the conference. And they're there from the 21st to 24th. So that's Monday through Tuesday was a Thursday, right? Hopefully they will be unaffected by the hurricane hitting California right now. Well, actually, I think it's in Mexico. I don't think it's made it to California yet, but it's on the path. I think it's going to go through San Diego. So my friends in San Diego, I really hope they'll be okay too. Let's move on to the Toots and Skeets now. So I like this one. It was an exercise program. Looks like a picture of a newspaper page. It said exercise for people over 60. And I'm going to read this because I missed it the first time. It said, begin by standing on a comfortable surface where you have plenty of room on each side. With a 5-pound potato bag in each hand, extend your arms straight out from your sides and hold them there for as long as you can. Try to reach a full minute, then relax. Each day you'll find you can hold this position for just a bit longer. After a couple of weeks, move up to 10-pound potato bags. Then try 50-pound potato bags and eventually try to get to where you can lift a 100-pound potato bag in each hand and hold your arms straight for more than a full minute. I'm at this level. After you feel confident in that level, put a potato in each bag. Yes. Wait, I got it. There we go. The next one here is suddenly it all makes sense, and it showed a progress bar stuck there in the middle. And of course, if you see it in 3D, you can see why. It's not at all straight. It's got all those bends in it. I've seen diagrams like that before, but this was a really good one, so thought I'd include it. This one entitled Banana Wrapper. I think this was a Skeet, maybe. It said first person eat a banana. This is not good. And the after that it says first person to peel a banana. Dude, guess what? Yeah, I can see how that would make a difference, but lots of people have to fail before the first success. Now we get to this part. I didn't want to have a section like this week. I really didn't. I had no desire. I've spent way too much time talking about that fool who loves to see his name in print, But X marks the downward spiral. I like this tweet, and this is actually this was a retweet that was tweeted on Mastodon. It said the Monterey Bay Aquarium announced its departure from Twitter with a nice tweet saying, so long and thanks for all the fish. I don't think I can, it doesn't get any bigger, unfortunately, when I magnify that one. And of course, if you're not aware, that is part of one of the books in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series, and it was a trilogy of 6 books, as they say, written by Douglas Adams. And so long for thanks for all the fish was the last message sent by the dolphins when they left Earth just before it was destroyed in the first chapter of book 1. Yeah. If you haven't read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I kind of envy you. You have a real treat in front of you. The first book is the best, but it is really fun. I probably am due for another reread. All right, so I wasn't going to waste time and energy lamenting the demise of Twitter and the idiocy of good old Elon the Stupid yet again. For example, I'm not going to comment on the incredible pettiness of throttling links away from Twitter. Now, that's a link to a New York Times article, and that's a GIF link, so you can read that if you want. Here was the header. X slows down access to some rival sites. His social media service throttled access to sites such as Substack and Facebook and newspapers, although, of course, this is a newspaper article, so it said it began reversing the slow access to news sites. And it was all very petty. It was just the sites he doesn't like. I mean, how petty do you have to be to even think of something like that? And then worse is to take real developers off of real work and say, no, I want you to implement it, because he can't code his way out of a paper bag. He couldn't possibly have implemented that himself. So he had to burn real useful, chargeable developer hours on being petty and something that has got to go through QA, and then there'll be support calls and complaints, and then he'll look stupid when it comes out that this is what's going on, all to make these links look bad, make it look like it's the Washington Post that's taking a long time to load when it's a manual throttling done by Twitter. Oh my God. So how petty do you have to be, and then decide it's worth implementing, even though people are going to notice and call it, well, really, really petty and an incredibly whiny, pathetic man baby with a complete lack of self-control. The other one that came in later in the week was this lunacy of claiming they're going to disable the block button for everything except on direct messages. You got to be kidding. I mean, it's already chaos there with harassment. And this made the Washington Post. Here's the link to that. The other one was the New York Times. But both of these are GIF links. You could read them if you want. Elon Musk to limit block functions on his social media platform, says the feature will remain only for direct messages. I think this was an idiot idea off the top of his head. I don't think even the people at Twitter knew this was coming. There were some other comments that they had no idea this was coming, and they didn't have any plans to actually implement it. But it led to yet another exodus. And over on Blue Sky, people were complaining at how the site was slowing down, and it was because of the huge influx of new people. I heard about it on Mastodon and then saw more on Blue Sky. I like this comment, though. This was a Skeet, said of the 123 million some accounts following Musk on X, 42% of them, of his followers, or more than 63 million, have 0 followers themselves. Sounds like bots to me. Just over 72%, or 112 million, of these users have less or fewer, I suppose it should be, fewer than 10 followers on their account. So 72% of his followers are bots or wannabes or just people who are trying to tell him what he wants to hear. They're not anybody who actually cares about the site or anything else. Wow. At any rate, even the threat of disabling it brought up this comment, which was great. It said, this was a Skeet, said, so funny to make a decision so universally loathed that you break a different app, Blue Sky, for example. And somebody said, this is Elon's ideal Twitter experience, and there's the Alien and Alien 3 facing off with Ripley. Yeah, that sounds about right, actually. And I'm not going to comment on it at all, right? I will tell you, though, I believe currently have either 2 or 4 invites to Blue Sky that I can give out. Just send me a message, either reply to the newsletter or send me a personal email. I think my email is in the About section. That's perfectly fine. I'll have the email address go by on the video so you can get to that if you want to see it. This was funny. Somebody on Blue Sky said, wait a minute, welcome to Blue Sky. Here's some ground rules we all follow. No jokey death threats. You have to follow through. You can sell prescription pills to one another, but only on Whacked Out Wednesday, which now I have to go on Wednesday. If you're a lawyer, you have to start every post, regardless of subject, with, as a lawyer. Yeah, I showed that to my wife, of course, who is a retired attorney now, and I want to see what her response is. Seems reasonable. The next one was based on this lovely image here. I think I saw that on Mastodon, but I don't know who created it. See Barbie in the original Klingon. Yes. Isn't that great? That's Worf with a Barbie wig and a pink outfit. I mean, somebody spent time on that. I think that was AI generated, but I don't know. I mean, that's really good. So I was going to make some Barbie-related Klingon puns, but I couldn't come up with anything. So I went to GPT-4 and said, what do you got? It said, I have an image of Worf from Star Trek decked out as Barbie with long blonde hair and a pink outfit. The caption reads, see the Barbie movie in the original Klingon. I need some Barbie Klingon puns for it. Got any ideas? And of course, it came up with several. I think I liked the first one a lot, the barbecue. Join Worf at the barbecue where fashion meets the battlefield. Fierce meets fabulous, or Barb E. That's okay. Warrior of Glam. I think the one I liked the most was this one, K-List Collection. Dress for success with the K-List Collection, where every day is a good day to dazzle. That was good. Explore the fashion frontier, or success in style with Kapla Couture for the warrior who dares to be different. Yeah, okay, I thought that was remarkably good, but that was GPT-4. 3.5, I doubt would have done such a good job. So I approve, that's why I want access to GPT-4 programmatically. Speaking of Klingons, I love this little picture. It was a picture. I don't know what the original source was. I just saw somebody retweet the picture or reskeet it or retweet it or whatever it is, saying, loving my new Klingon bird of prey tattoo. And of course, you don't see anything because, of course, the bird of prey is cloaked. That's the sort of tattoo I could get into, though I imagine avoiding the pain would violate the whole spirit of Klingons, but still, brilliant idea. This one I had to entitle, What About Thomas? It's a picture from somewhere in the UK, I believe. It says, stay off the tracks. They are only for trains. If you can read this, you're not a train. And I'm thinking, my immediate thought was poor Thomas the Tank Engine. Either it's going to think he was left out or he can't read it. And both of those are sad, but still. I thought this was inspired. The challenge was to depluralize a film, so that if a film title had a plural in it, make it singular. And the example was Jaw, of course. Star War would be an obvious additional one. But this was brilliant. The reply was A Crow on the Orient Express. And if you need a hint on that, what's the collective noun for crows? Well, spoiler, I'll tell you right here. Of course, it's a murder of crows. So the film that they are singularizing or depluralizing is Murder on the Orient Express, which I never would have come up with that. I thought that was great. And then finally, caffeine says coffee time, coffee, because murder is wrong, which again was another hint for the Murder on the Orient Express. But of course, that doesn't make it any less true. Have a great week, everybody. Last week, I taught that new features in Java course, which was fun, and the Practical AI Tools for Java Developers webinar. This week, I've got a Reactive Spring course on the O'Reilly platform and Spring Data as an NFJS virtual workshop. If you're in either of them, please drop by and say hello. And otherwise, and I'll put up another video this week on that interacting with ChatGPT. Thank you very much for coming. Take care, and be sure to click on one of the other links in the playlist. See you later.